March 3rd, 1952, 11:15 p.m. Mickey Cohen's hands wouldn't stop shaking as he stared at the brown paper bag on his desk. Inside were 75,000 in counterfeit bills, perfect reproductions that had fooled banks from Boston to Miami. And tomorrow morning, he was going to use them to pay Albert Anastasia, the Lord High Executioner, the Mad Hatter, the man who'd personally killed more people than polio. Albert Anastasia didn't forgive debts, and he certainly didn't forgive disrespect. But Mickey Cohen, a bookmaker who ran numbers out of 3 storefronts in Brownsville, Brooklyn, had convinced himself he could pull off the impossible. He could cheat Murder Inc.'s most dangerous killer and live to spend the savings. The debt was simple. Mickey had borrowed $75,000 from Anastasia 6 months earlier to expand his operation into Queens. The loan came with 20% interest and a firm deadline, March 4th, 1952. Pay in full or pay in blood. Mickey had the money. His operation was pulling in $30 a week. But Mickey had a problem that every degenerate gambler has. He couldn't stop betting. He'd lost $60,000 on boxing matches in February alone. Stupid bets, emotional bets, the kind that left a man's pockets empty and his options limited. 3 weeks ago, Mickey had been introduced to a counterfeiter named Solomon Weiss through a connection in the garment district. Solomon was an artist. His bills passed every test, the paper weight, the ink composition, the serial numbers, everything. Banks can't tell the difference, Solomon had promised. How's a gangster gonna know? Mickey had bought $75,000 in fake hundreds for $15,000 real. The math was beautiful. Pay Anastasia with the counterfeits, keep the real $75,000, expand into the Bronx, triple his operation within a year. By the time anyone discovered the bills were fake, if they ever did, the trail would be cold. Anastasia would have spent them, circulated them, mixed them with legitimate money. There'd be no way to trace them back to Mickey Cohen. It was perfect. It was foolproof. It was the kind of plan that seemed brilliant at 3 a.m. after too much whiskey and not enough sleep. What Mickey didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that Albert Anastasia had a system that had kept him alive and powerful for 30 years. Every payment over $50,000 went through his counting room in Red Hook. Every bill got examined by a man named Joseph Maroney, who'd worked for the Treasury Department for 15 years, before Anastasia offered him triple his government salary to verify cash. Joseph could spot a counterfeit bill in seconds, the slight variation in ink texture, the microscopic differences in paper grain, the things Solomon Weiss thought didn't matter. Joseph Maroney noticed everything, and Albert Anastasia had a simple rule about people who tried to cheat him. He didn't just kill them, he erased them, their businesses, their families, their entire existence. Albert Anastasia believed in sending messages that echoed through the underworld for years. Tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., Mickey Cohen would hand over that brown paper bag and seal his fate. March 4th, 1952, 9:47 a.m. Mickey Cohen drove his Buick Roadmaster through Red Hook, the brown paper bag sitting on the passenger seat like a ticking bomb. He'd barely slept. He'd rehearsed what he'd say, how he'd act. Casual, confident, like a man who'd earned the money honestly and was happy to settle his debts. Anastasia's social club was a modest storefront on Columbia Street, wedged between a butcher shop and a laundromat. Nothing about it suggested it was the headquarters of organized crime's most feared enforcer. That was the point. Albert Anastasia understood that power didn't need to announce itself. Mickey walked in at exactly 10 a.m. The club was dark, smelling of espresso and cigars. 4 men sat at a card table, not playing, just watching. Albert Anastasia sat alone in the back, reading a newspaper, a cup of coffee steaming. Beside him, Mickey Cohen, Anastasia said without looking up. Right on time. I appreciate punctuality. Mr. Anastasia, Mickey said, his voice steadier than he felt. I've got your money. Full payment, $75,000, plus the $15,000 interest. Anastasia folded his newspaper and finally looked at Mickey. He was smaller than Mickey expected, maybe 5'8", but his eyes were absolutely dead. Shark eyes. You had a good 6 months then. Your operation must be doing well. Can't complain, Mickey said, setting the bag on the table. 75,000, all hundreds like we agreed. Anastasia didn't touch the bag. He gestured to one of the men at the card table. Tommy, take this to Joseph. Standard verification. Mickey's stomach dropped. Verification? I don't accept payment without verification, Anastasia said calmly. Surely you understand. In our business, trust is important, but confirmation is better. Joseph will count it, check it, make sure everything's legitimate. Takes maybe 30 minutes. You can wait. Have some coffee. Mickey's mind raced. He could leave, say he had an appointment, come back later. But that would look suspicious. Refusing to wait while your payment was verified screamed guilt. He had no choice but to sit there and pray that Solomon Weiss was as good as he'd claimed. Of course, Mickey said, trying to smile. Happy to wait. Tommy took the bag and disappeared through a door in the back. Mickey sat down. Anastasia offered him coffee, which Mickey accepted even though his hands were shaking too much to drink it properly. 28 minutes passed in silence. Anastasia read his newspaper. The men at the card table smoked. Mickey tried to control his breathing and failed. Then the door opened. Tommy came back, but he wasn't alone. Joseph Maroney walked beside him, holding a single $100 bill between two fingers like it was contaminated. Joseph laid the bill on the table in front of Anastasia. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Anastasia looked at the bill, then at Mickey Cohen. His face showed nothing, no anger, no surprise, just cold calculation. Mickey, Anastasia said quietly, we need to talk about this bill. Mickey Cohen knew in that moment he was a dead man. The room behind Anastasia's social club had no windows, just concrete walls, a metal table, and a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling. Mickey Cohen sat in a wooden chair, hands trembling, while Albert Anastasia stood across from him, still holding that $100 bill. Where did you get this money, Mickey? Anastasia's voice was conversational, almost gentle. That made it more terrifying. I earned it, Mickey stammered. 6 months of work. My operation's been strong, I told you. You told me a lot of things, Anastasia interrupted. But this bill, Mickey, this bill tells me a different story. He held it up to the light. Joseph, explain to Mickey what you found. Joseph Maroney stepped forward, adjusting his glasses. The paper stock is wrong. It's good, very good, but it's commercial grade, not treasury grade. The ink has a slight petroleum base instead of the standard formulation, and the serial numbers, while sequential and properly formatted, don't match treasury records for bills issued in this series. In simpler terms, Anastasia said, you tried to pay me with fake money. No, I swear, I didn't know, Mickey started, but Anastasia raised a hand. Don't insult me with lies. You knew. Men don't accidentally come into $75,000 in counterfeit bills. You bought these. Probably paid, 15-20 cents on the dollar? Anastasia sat down across from Mickey. Here's what I can't figure out. You're not stupid, Mickey. You've been running numbers for 10 years. You know how this world works. So why would you think you could cheat me and survive? Mickey's mind scrambled for an answer, an excuse, anything. I was desperate. I lost. Money on fights. I got in deep. I panicked. You panicked, Anastasia repeated. So instead of coming to me, explaining the situation, asking for an extension, which I might have granted, you decided to commit suicide. Because that's what this is, Mickey. Suicide. Please, Mr. Anastasia, I've got the real money. I can get it. Give me 1 week. Where is it? In my counting room, in Brownsville. I've got $80,000 there. Real money. I can have it here tomorrow. Anastasia was silent for a long moment, studying Mickey's face. Your counting room in Brownsville? The storefront on Pitkin Avenue, above the deli? Yes, I can go there right now, bring you everything. No, Anastasia said. You'll stay here. Tommy, Frankie, you'll go to Mickey's counting room. You'll collect every dollar you find. You'll bring it back here. We'll verify it's real this time, and then we'll discuss Mickey's future. Tommy and Frankie stood up. We'll need keys, Tommy said. Mickey fumbled in his pocket, pulled out a key ring, hands shaking so badly he dropped it twice before handing it over. The counting room is in the back, behind the false wall, Mickey said. There's a safe. Combination is 17 to 33-8. Everything's there, I promise. Anastasia nodded to his men. They left. Now we wait, Anastasia said, lighting a cigar. And Mickey, pray that you're telling the truth. Because if you've lied to me again, if there's not $80,000 in that room, then we're past the point of negotiation. Mickey sat in that windowless room, knowing that his life depended on what Tommy and Frankie found in Brownsville. March 4th, 1952, 2:17 p.m. Tommy and Frankie pulled up outside Mickey Cohen's storefront on Pitkin Avenue. The deli on the ground floor was closed for lunch. The street was quiet. They went around back, found the service entrance, and let themselves in. The counting room was exactly where Mickey said it would be. Behind a false wall, accessible through a hidden door mechanism, was a space about 15 by 20 feet, filing cabinets, a desk, and a floor safe built into the concrete. Tommy knelt down, spun the combination. 17 to 33, 8. The safe clicked open. Inside were stacks of cash, neatly organized. Hundreds, 50s, 20s. Tommy started pulling them out, counting. Frankie watched the door. 10 minutes later, Tommy had counted $83,000. All real, as far as he could tell, but they'd bring it to Joseph for verification. "Okay," Tommy said, loading the money into 2 canvas bags. "Let's get this back to—" He stopped. Frankie was holding something, a ledger book he'd found in one of the filing cabinets. "What?" Tommy asked. "You should see this," Frankie said quietly. The ledger contained Mickey's records, not just his numbers operation, but everything. Names, dates, payments, including a detailed accounting of money paid to police captains, judges, and city officials. But more importantly, it contained records of payments Mickey had made to other bookmakers, other operations, including competitors of Anastasia's organization, and there, on a page dated February 1952, was an entry that made Tommy's blood run cold. "Payment to Genevieve's crew, $12,000, territory agreement, Queens expansion." Mickey Cohen had borrowed money from Albert Anastasia to expand into Queens, and then he'd used that money to pay the Genovese family for permission to operate in their territory. He'd played both families against each other. "He's not just a cheat," Frankie said. "He's a rat playing both sides." Tommy closed the ledger. "We take the money, we take this book, and we make a phone call." At 3:45 p.m., Tommy called the social club from a payphone. He explained what they'd found. The money, the ledger, the Genevese payments. There was a long silence on the other end. Then Anastasia's voice, cold and final. "Burn it." "The ledger?" "Everything. The counting room, the ledger, all of it. Make sure there's nothing." Left. Tommy understood. This wasn't just about Mickey cheating Anastasia. This was about Mickey creating evidence that could start a war between families. The ledger had to disappear. At 4:30 p.m., Tommy and Frankie doused Mickey's counting room with gasoline. They took the cash and the ledger with them. Everything else, the filing cabinets, the desk, the records of Mickey's entire operation, they left to burn. The fire started in the counting room and spread through the building. By the time the fire department arrived, the entire structure was engulfed. The deli below, Mickey's apartment above, everything gone. At 6:15 p.m., back at the social club, Albert Anastasia sat across from Mickey Cohen and slid the ledger across the table. "Your counting room burned down this afternoon," Anastasia said calmly. "Terrible accident. These old buildings, electrical fires, very common." Mickey stared at the ledger, then at Anastasia, understanding flooding his face. "You tried to cheat." "Me with fake money," Anastasia continued, "that I could have forgiven eventually. But you took my money and paid my enemies. You created records that could start a war. That, Mickey, is unforgivable." Anastasia stood up. "You're going to leave New York tonight. You're going to disappear. And if I ever hear your name again, if you ever set foot in the city again, there won't be a fire. There'll just be a body that never gets found. Do you understand?" Mickey nodded, tears running down his face. "Take your real money. Consider it a severance package. And Mickey," Anastasia's voice dropped to a whisper, "next time you think about cheating someone, remember that counting rooms burn, but ledgers survive. And men who keep records of their betrayals always get caught." Mickey Cohen left New York that night. The last anyone heard, he was running a small betting operation in Las Vegas, broken and paranoid, checking over his shoulder for the rest of his life. The fire at Pitkin Avenue was ruled accidental. No investigation was ever opened, and in underworld circles, the story became legend. Not about the counterfeit money, but about the lesson Albert Anastasia taught that day. You don't just punish the man, you erase his entire operation. You burn the evidence, eliminate the threat, and send a message that echoes for decades. The bookmaker who tried to cheat the Lord High Executioner learned what everyone in that world eventually learned. Albert Anastasia didn't just kill his enemies, he erased them so completely, it was like they never existed at all.